All right, this is another one of those the dislike is hidden type of things, so you guys won't be able to see, but I'm expecting there to be quite a number based on just the topic and how some of these things get kind of dicey in terms of stuff that I say when it comes to the Persona franchise and what the smart thing is for the franchise going forward and all of that. So I expect that here, but however, if you allow me to explain myself, I can discuss more things surrounding what's going on with ATLUS and Persona and the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation from the business and consumer side, which I think makes the most sense. Before we get into anything, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. Now, you guys see the title here, and I want to reiterate something that I talked about before. I think it was like more than a year ago at this point. I'll dig it up and I'll have the video link for you guys in the description as well, where I talked about I don't fully trust Sony, PlayStation 5, whatever the case is, with the next Persona game, considering what's going on in Japan, considering what's going on with the global market. Now, if you go back all the way to when Persona 5 was being released, this was when they started developing that game, 2013, 2014 or so. The market in terms of what was going on was completely different. There was no Nintendo Switch, the Wii U was flopping, the Nintendo 3DS could not handle a Persona game, so pretty much the only place that they could go to for what they wanted to do would be PlayStation. Obviously, the Xbox is no factor in Japan when it comes to Shin Megami Tensei or Persona or whatever the case is with ATLUS, so it doesn't really make sense to kind of target that platform. So it made complete sense for ATLUS to kind of go in with Persona 5 and also the PlayStation 4 at the time, well, PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, because they weren't really sure. It was kind of in between in terms of when the game was going to be coming out with the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4, and it ended up just being a PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 game. But the game was delayed. There was all sorts of issues. So yeah, it came up at the very end of the life, so they just put it on both, and it made sense. I mean, it's essentially a PlayStation 3 game, which they up-res a little bit for the PlayStation 4, which they then upgraded a bit more with Persona 5 Royal, so it made sense then. But now if you're looking at it now in 2021, 2022, 2023, the landscape has completely changed. Sony is not dominant in Japan at all to a factor. I mean, there's really just nothing there. If you're looking at the sales, the previous 2 weeks ago, they sold about 4,000 units. They're not shipping units there. And then this past week, they sold about 8,000 units. Actually, less than that. They sold less than 7,500 units in Japan. So if you're looking at those type of sales and you look at what Persona is, it is a Japanese franchise first and foremost. They do get hundreds of thousands of units of sales in Japan, but can you really rely upon that with how the PlayStation 5 is doing in Japan? And chances are that when Persona 6 is ready, is there going to be a PlayStation 4 market that's going to be buying games? We're seeing with the Trails of Cold Steel series, we're seeing with a lot of other games that they're having dwindling sales because of the Switch market share cutting into there in Japan, and also just people just aren't buying the PlayStation 4 games as much anymore. Now, you still have some successes out there to where you can get a big launch for a game, but it's becoming very apparent that when it comes down to what's going on in Japan, at least, and yeah, it's definitely not selling as much as it used to when it comes to some of these bigger games. And I think that it's having an industry-wide effect. It's not just on certain Japanese titles, it's even on some of the bigger titles out there for the West as well. I think that Final Fantasy VII Remake was one of those games. I think that Final Fantasy 15 in Japan was one of those games. I think that there are a number of titles that definitely didn't do as well just because of the declining home console type of market in Japan and the rise of, let's just say, mobile gaming for Japan, and also the Nintendo Switch, which is a hybrid platform. So when I said that back then, people called me fanboy, people call me names, people say all sorts of stuff, but it really wasn't because I was trying to do that, because I have a PlayStation 4, I have a PlayStation 5, I have a PlayStation 2, I have a PlayStation everything when it comes down to it. I have a PlayStation, all of that, and I play games on there, I play games on Xbox. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm talking about it from a business perspective and also from a consumer's perspective when it comes to the type of game that Persona breeds. SMT5 is the first mainline SMT game that we've gotten, or mainline anything game that we've gotten with that style of turn-based combat on the Nintendo Switch, and it's absolutely incredible to play that lying down in bed and play that in terms of the demon Infusion and everything, and it makes sense that Persona one of these days will come over when it comes to the mainline Persona brand outside of Persona 5 Strikers, when it comes to the tried and true gameplay of the turn-based combat and what they do, Persona 4, right, Persona 3, Persona 5, any of those. So to me, it makes perfect sense in terms of what I said back then, and I accurately predicted that the PlayStation 5 was going to struggle based off of the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, even the Vita to an extent, and also now the PlayStation 5 at this point in Japan. So you do have a large audience in the West that's going to buy Persona 6 or the next Persona, but I do feel that even in the West, if you look at it, with the, I would say, chip shortage, even going into next year and maybe even longer than that, when is Persona 6 coming? They're obviously working on it, but is this game going to be 3-4 years out? If that's the case, what's the install base of the PlayStation 5 going to be, and enough people interested in that type of game that are buying it here in the West compared to Japan? What's that going to look like? I think that they need to have a safety buffer, and here's my, I would say, proposition to what they should do. They should definitely take the path of what Dragon Quest did. They saw even back then, right? And that was with a bigger install base, with the PlayStation 4 being at the end of its life, nearing towards the launch of the PlayStation 5. They said, hey, we're going to make this on multiple different things. And not only going to make this on multiple different things, it's each going to be its own unique individual thing. Now, this is Square Enix. Dragon Quest does sell more, so they probably have more of a budget and everything, so I get that. But at the same time, I think that ATLUS definitely needs to take that risk with this. I feel that they should do what they did with Dragon Quest 11, right? You had Dragon Quest 11S on the Nintendo Switch that was custom built. It used Unreal Engine 4, which Persona 6 could use Unreal Engine 4 just based off of Shin Megami Tensei 5 using Unreal Engine. So they based it off of that. They made its own unique version. It was not a port from the PlayStation 4 or from the Nintendo 3DS. They made a unique version for the Nintendo 3DS. They made their version for the PlayStation 4, and they made their unique version for the Nintendo 3DS. Now, you don't have to worry about Nintendo 3DS in this case. I see why Square Enix was doing that, because the Switch version wasn't going to be ready, and plus the 3DS had a big install base, so it made sense for them to make it on there, and it sold over 1 million units, so they made their money back and then some on that Nintendo 3DS game. But I definitely feel that with Persona 6, they should do something like that. It should come out on the PlayStation 5. They should have it on there. They should probably have a backwards compatible PlayStation 4 version just in case, right? Or make a PlayStation 4 version of the game and then upscale it or make it run better, or the PlayStation 5 version like Tales of Arise did in some of these other games, Scarlet Nexus and all of that. So make it like that, but essentially it's a PlayStation 4 game, and then you can just upscale it and everything. And then they should make a unique Nintendo Switch version of the game if they can. Still has the same content, still is the same game and everything, but essentially make it for the Switch. Don't just port it to where it's like a lazy port to where it has issues, whatever the case is, almost like Persona 5 Strikers. Not that it was lazy, but that definitely wasn't the best port job that they can do. You can tell that they just took the PlayStation 4 version of the game and said, all right, let's just put it on there, but actually make and develop and use the Switch system to its fullest extent that you can do. And I think that if you do that with Persona 6, and of course at some point in between now and then you release Persona 5, I think that you're going to see a huge jump in terms of sales across the board. It's going to sell more if the game is absolutely amazing, which I'm guessing the game will be amazing. This is just hypothetically speaking that the game is amazing, like Persona 3, Persona 4, Persona 5, SMT5. All these games are absolutely incredible, so that's just assuming that it is really good. We can see the game break all sorts of sales records for ATLUS, and I think that it would be a win-win for everybody involved. So that was essentially what I was saying then with that video, and I think that it makes sense not at this point, and we're seeing what's going on in Japan, and we're seeing what the buying habits are of people here in the West. If you look at some of the JRPGs that have been released, stuff like Tales of Arise did okay, but if you look at the install base, they sold like 1 point something million. I think that they're right around that, 2 million or so, and that was on the install base of hundreds of millions of people, right? Not including the Switch, hundreds of millions, and that was a super high quality, popular RPG series. Not quite as popular as Persona, but still a very popular RPG series. And there's been a number of other RPGs to come out and not quite hit numbers that you would expect them to hit, despite them being on so many different systems. So I think that they have to navigate this with some dexterity and also intelligently as well, and I feel that they will. So I do know that there's probably going to be some people, which I probably should have said this earlier because you guys are probably already commenting in the section saying, well, the power of the system, it's not good enough, the power and all that. And I get that. I do think that whenever this game does come out, right? At some point, it's probably going to be years down the line. I think that there's room for them to do multiple versions. I think that there's room for them to make a Switch version, and at the Switch version, it can upscale to the next Switch, right? So very similar to what the Xbox does, and even the PS4 does, right? With PS5 games and everything, it upscales, backwards compatible type of game. You can play it on your Switch 2 if it comes out at that point, right? You can play it on there, and it runs good on there, or runs better. And if not, you can play it on your regular Switch as well, because the Switch is still going to be around even a number of years into the future, just because there's so many people that have a Switch. So the system's just still going to be around. So to me, it makes sense then, but we don't know when Persona 6 is coming. I'm just talking about just in general, and I'm seeing the numbers when it comes to the analytics side of things, and it's obviously not looking too good, you know. And even like with the PlayStation 4 in Japan, I mean, it only sold 84 units in the past week. Obviously, people aren't really buying too many games on there, not really buying the system anymore, so you can't really rely upon that system overall for everything, because momentum has just completely tanked. And even at this point, you know, you look at the top 30 sales, and most of them are Nintendo Switch games, with a very select small few PlayStation 4, and PS5 is almost never on the board when it comes down to it. So that's just my thoughts on it, guys. I know that was kind of lengthy, but I do feel that it was right when it comes to my analysis back then. Like I said, I got a lot of heat for it from some people, but at the same time, I felt that I was right about it, and it looks like I was right about it now that we're in the PlayStation 5 era and we're seeing what's going on in Japan. The same stuff that I was saying a year plus ago. So those are my thoughts on everything. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, now moving on to the next topic here. We do have an update, rumored update on Pokemon Legends Arceus for the Nintendo Switch. This is from Central Leaks, so you can't take it as 100% fact. You can't take it as this is going to happen 100%. You just can't do that, all right? So take it with a grain of salt. Is that the same that they say all the time on these YouTube videos? But yeah, just don't take it super seriously. But I did want to get the information out to you guys because it seems something that could be likely based on what we've seen on the game so far, and based on the fact that the game is not a multiplayer focused game. It's a single player focused Pokemon experience. So it does seem like it'll do some of these things that you were going to see in this rumor here. So shout outs to Central Leaks for this one. They got the beat. So starting out here, they do say from Central Leaks, this will be the longest main series Pokemon game ever. It's a quote-unquote hardcore game where resource allocation is very important. I like what I'm hearing there. You will have to buy item slots as you progress. I like that as well. If you just pick everything you find, you will fill your inventory. There's also more here to go over. The game is very grindy. You will have to find items to craft Pokeballs. The final goal of the game is catching Arceus. Shinies are shown as shiny in the overworld, just like Pokemon Let's Go. However, some Pokemon, even shiny ones, may run away when approached. That will be fun. So very interesting things here, guys. Like I said, I don't want to delve too much into this because it is a rumor, but it does seem to line up with some of the other rumored information beforehand what Central Leaks had, and then after when they showed off the first trailer and then the second trailer for Pokemon Legends Arceus. This does seem, and it falls in line with what they officially announced with some of the crafting when it comes to the Pokeballs and everything, and the fact that yes, you can see Pokemon on the overworld, right? Like in the open world, you can see them. So if it was shiny, it makes sense that they would be shiny in the overworld. So some of this stuff just seems like, yeah, of course that's going to be a thing as well. It does make sense that the game will be harder or will be hardcore per se, because there is no multiplayer in this game, which is that's where the challenge usually is, like trying to rise up the ranks in the multiplayer. So the single player has to be challenging enough for people out there. There needs to be at least something in there to keep people interested when it comes to this type of game. And on top of that, like I did say, this game, I mean, you're having a very different type of combat experience. You're having Pokemon attacking you in the overworld. It's a hybrid and mix of action and also the turn-based. I mean, you have a lot of variety with this type of game compared to previous Pokemon games, since they are singling in, kind of honing in on that single player experience more so than multiplayer, which there is trading in this game, but there isn't the normal multiplayer PvP. So they have to supplement that somehow, and it's going to be through challenges. It's going to be through collecting a bunch of stuff. It's going to be through getting all these different Pokemon and trying to catch them, and some of them are a lot harder than others. They have to make it a game somehow, and that's the way that you do it for people to keep interest in it outside of just the PvP multiplayer where you're going to usually get the challenge from. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how this lines up and what goes on. I mean, Pokemon Legends Arceus is coming out next month. We're about a month and some odd weeks away from the launch of the game. It will be here at the end of January, so it's going to be very interesting to see how the game kind of is receptive from the fans out there and what people think about it when you don't have that traditional PvP experience and it's more about the single player experience and this new hybrid battle system that they are touting as the next innovation for the Pokemon franchise when it comes down to it. So we'll see how it all works out. But what are your thoughts when it comes to Pokemon Legends Arceus and what they're doing here with the rumors here, remember, rumor, and also my own personal thoughts when it comes to not trusting what's going on with the PlayStation 5 Persona 6 and what could happen in the future and what they need to do, what ATLUS needs to do. Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.